Hello, everyone, and welcome to Press Coverage, part of the Going for Two Live network. I'm your host, Kyle Senra, and joining me, I guess, longtime associate with Going for Two. I know you've been associated with us for a while, Courtney Harden from the Real Deal podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Kyle. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it, man. Big fan of yours. You've been on my show once before, so I got to get you back on. It's been a while, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate the invite, though. I'm excited to chop it up with you for this, however long it's going to be. So, but I'm really excited to be on.
Yeah, and of course, I'm really excited for anyone who's either watching this live or listening in podcast form after the fact, or watching on YouTube after the fact as well. But yeah, the Going for Two Live network is available on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. You can see us on Twitter video, but if you are watching live on Twitter, we can't unfortunately get your comments. So if you do want to comment, ask questions, interact, we encourage you to head over to the Going for Two Live YouTube page. So just go to YouTube, search up Going for Two Live, should get there, and subscribe, get all the notifications so you always know when all the great shows are going live. And as always, press coverage, like a good corner in press coverage. And I guess I don't know about the Eagles. Maybe that's not the best team to explain that for, but can cover really well. Nothing's left exposed. We're going to get to all the truth. So give us the real deal, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But Courtney, I guess the first question always start is, what are your first sports memories? So where does sports fandom start for you?
Wow. I mean, yes, you got the questions. That was a really good question. So like I was telling you before we started recording, I had to go back. So I'm dating myself. So yes, I was born in 1979. So I'm going way back. So, but some of the couple first sport memories was the Chicago Bulls when this was, I think, 1980, I think it was 86. So I was like 7 years old. And this was when the Bulls, they made the playoffs, and they were playing the Boston Celtics. This was when Michael Jordan scored 63 points, and he was dominating them, the Celtics. Even though Celtics were one of the greatest teams ever. I mean, that year they beat the Bulls. They beat them 3-1 in that series, or might have swept them. But Jordan going between his legs, and and Larry Bird and them they couldn't guard him. And Larry Bird said after the game, after Jordan scored 63 points, he said, I think that was God in shorts that we were playing against. So that just had that was the fascinating part of that. And then I became a Bulls fan, still a Bulls fan to this day, today. And then if you go to football, fast forward a couple years later, in 1988 with Randall Cunningham, the Eagles playing the Giants, and Randall Cunningham still one of, if not my favorite, Philadelphia Eagle. So big Eagles fan. So when there was a play with Carl Banks, they were at the 4-yard line, and Randall's scrambling around. Carl Banks hits him low, and we know if you know Randall Cunningham, guy moves around and he's a scrambler, so he was so athletic, and he hits him low. He thought he had it, he hit him, and then Randall somehow dives, and then he falls down, puts his left arm, and he throws a strike in the end zone. So that's how I became an Eagles fan, just from that. And my aunt was a big Eagles fan. She was from Philadelphia. She used to come because I'm from upstate New York, so she would come, and that's how I became an Eagles fan. She was a big Eagles fan. We watched all the Eagles games, and that was one of the first games I've seen. That was in 1988.
So I guess basketball, football rooted into ingrained in your sports life, seems like, for a while. And some of those Eagles teams, like they're pretty loaded defensively too. You mentioned the offense, the Reggie White, Jerome Brown duo.
Yes.
And definitely some good teams there, and some good people joining us. We've got Gator J, who has been on the two most recent episodes of the Dynasty Gambit. The next episode will be next Thursday, by the way, here on the Going for Two Live Network, Thursday the 18th. So I definitely, come check us out on that. But yeah, appreciate Gator J for joining on those episodes and joining for us tonight. And he's messaging just saying, "Good evening, fellas. Thanks for time for a great show." And I say thank you, Gator.
Yeah, thanks, Gator J. Yeah, definitely.
So I guess sports fandom and watching sports on TV. Did you go to many games when you were young? I guess being upstate New York, it's been certainly Chicago is probably not the easiest to get to. But you ever managed to get to Eagles games?
No, I didn't go to an Eagles game until I moved here. I moved here in Philly 9 years ago. But I saw the Bulls. That was even later too. That was after the Jordan years. So never got to that many games. I did see, from upstate New York, there's so many different fandom. So it's like there's Giants fans, Eagles fans, Jets fans, Buffalo Bills fans. So I did go to a Bills game back then. So that was in the late '90s. So I was a little older still then, Eagles and Bills. But that was the closest I've been to a game when I was living in upstate New York. So, but yeah, like there's fans all over in upstate New York. Like I said, Jets, Bills, Giants, Eagles, Cowboy fans. I mean, it's all over the place up in upstate.
Well, and then throw in basketball, probably tons of Knicks fans everywhere.
Yes, Knicks fans, Chicago Bulls fans, but a lot of Knicks fans. I know a lot of Knicks fans, and that was a battle and a lot of arguments and discussion. Even to this day, a lot of discussions about Knicks Bulls and how the Bulls used to always beat down the Knicks in the '90s. But they were good series because it was physical series, so it was always good to debate in high school and then elementary, junior high, and high school, debating all our sports fandom and a lot of different teams and fans. So yeah, it's always fun.
I guess, I mean, I'm sure like Northeast Boston Celtics fans too. Like that's something that probably just permeates, isn't
Yeah.
just a Boston thing.
Right. Yeah, there was Celtics fans, and there wasn't too many back then. There wasn't too many New England Patriots fans. I knew of one even before Tom Brady got there. But once Tom Brady got there was a lot of fans migrated to the New England. So yeah, but yeah, Knicks was huge. Like I said, so there was some Celtics, but it was mostly Bulls and Knicks growing up. Was a lot of the fandom.
So when did you kind of transition to just from watching to almost participating in a sense and discover fantasy sports?
Mm. It was so growing up, just you said, just watching sports, playing sports, just enjoyed it. I enjoyed listening to, back then it wasn't podcasts, it was the radio or TV, but listening to the radio, and just then transitioning from there. My wife's uncle, he was playing fantasy sports one time when I was working with him, and he was telling me about all of this about fantasy sports. I had heard about it. They wanted to participate in it, and then he had a team. I think it was basketball at the time, and he had a team, and he was telling me, "Oh yeah, you just you follow the stats and you follow what they do, and added points and things like that." And I was like, "This is fascinating. This is something I really want to do because I've always loved researching statistics and all that." So that I was still big on that now. And that's when the transition hit. Like, I want to do this. So the next year I got into a fantasy league. He said, "Well, you can jump in my league next year," because it was too late to enter his league. So I said, "Let me jump into this league. I really wanted to do this." So that's where the love came from. Ever since, I think I was like 99, 98, 99. Yeah, I was out of high school. So that's where the fantasy sports love came from him. And the funny thing is, my first game that I was excited about had Sam Cassell, and he was like dominating his first game for my fantasy team. He was dominating. I think he had like 30 some points, and then he sprains his ankle, and then he's out for 6 to 8 weeks. I was like, really? I said, that would be my luck. First time playing fantasy sports, one of my main guys at the time, he gets hurt. And now I'm not getting any points for him because, at that time, fantasy sports, there wasn't a lot of, you can still do trades, but it's not what it is today. Where you can check on the internet, and get your stats and make trades and things like that. So yeah, I was like, okay, this is how it's going to be. So, but ever since then, yes, I've been loving fantasy sports.
And if you had like say preseason injury and you hadn't seen the 30-point potential,
Yeah.
you'd be okay. He's just another guy. I mean, what's that? But he did just enough to show you how awesome he was, and then took it away almost as immediately.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's what it was. It was like like the first game of the year. I was like, oh, I got a loaded team. Maybe I got Cassell. I can't remember the team I had, but I knew I had Sam Cassell. But like I say, he got injured. He got injured in the fourth quarter after scoring 30 plus points. And then it's like, wow. So now what do I do? So then that's when you learn about waiver wire, and you learn about how to make trades and things like that. So yeah, it was. And then it turned into not just fantasy basketball; it turned into fantasy football, baseball. I've done fantasy baseball. I've done it. I've done it all when it comes to fantasy sports. But now I just usually I stick with football and I do a little basketball here and there, but for DFS, I do a lot more. I do golf, I do UFC, things like that. But it's mostly fantasy football and basketball.
Any CFL DFS?
No, never did CFL. No, I'm not that desperate to go that route to go to CFL. But it would have been. I mean, I'll try it, but I've never done CFL.
Well, just to say, because again, going for 2, you got tons of DFS content.
Yeah.
So I know I put out my weekly CFL DFS articles, just asking for
Yeah.
that for my own interest.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I
Selfish
mean,
plug.
Yeah, hey, get that plug in. But yeah, I never did CFL. But there's some, like I said, golf, and I've done tennis before. That's hard. But it's very difficult. But it's fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, and again, you're saying like with this fantasy success and a 30-point player, you realize how elusive that is and rare. Kind of like the elusive Yeti who's joined us tonight, the Yeti DFS. Thanks, Jared, for joining. He mentions Kyle and Courtney here, so yeah, the two of us together on press coverage, and even Gator J's getting in Yeti sighting, right? It's as Yeti mentions, apparently it's something else every time you see one. So.
Yeah, shout out to both of them.
Well, actually, Jared's mentioning, drafted Andrew Luck 2 days later. He retired. I remember, and next weekend I'll be going to this draft. We always go to a friend's cottage and draft. So he and his family and friends long time have been part of, and they've expanded the league to 14. So I've had a team the last couple of years, and I remember actually subbing in for someone. So I was drafting part of this league even before I actually had a team and joined. And that year I subbed, it was 2019, yeah. And someone, I think, took Andrew Luck, even though it was a 1 QB league, like pretty early, like third, fourth round. And I think I can't remember if I think they're a Colts fan. But anyway, yeah. So we draft that Saturday, and then sure enough, 4 hours later, the news breaks, and as I think the commissioner's filling off the team names from the draft board to the computer so we can log in and do league things. Just checking Twitter, and news breaks, and it's we're just glued to the TV watching the press conference afterwards. I don't know if I've ever watched a press conference so much.
Oh, and I remember when Andrew Luck retired. It was like, is this for real? Like, is he actually retired? It's almost like when Barry Sanders retired, like just left, and you're thinking, oh no, like what happened? Like what's going on? Especially back then when Barry Sanders did it, you didn't know what to did. Was he injured, or was just like no? He was just done, just tired of he was tired. I think he was tired of the losing, and just the Detroit franchise and how bad they've been, and so he was done. And now you see players walk away, athletes walk away within a couple of years because of the physical nature of the NFL. So yeah, Andrew Luck retiring, that was a big shot because he was transcending into being one of the upper echelon quarterbacks. Even at that time, he was. So he was ready to take that next level to become very elite. So yeah.
To your credit, Mr. Scamper is joining up and saying Barry was tired of the Lions.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, of the losing. And actually, Mr. Scampers is a great way. That's a great name to talk about Barry Sanders. Always scampered around there and find a way to find that hole and get those yards.
Taking a -2, you see Barry Sanders, -2 yards, and then boom, 80-yard run. It's like, yep, yeah, that's Barry, one of my all-time favorite running backs ever. So yeah, I loved Barry Sanders.
But yes, so we've talked about Yeti mentioning Calvin Johnson again. Another one was maybe left the game a little earlier than what would have expected. Probably still had some meat on the bones, so to speak. And the Lion just not so hungry. And Stafford. To be fair, Stafford got traded. Like he didn't technically choose to leave, although it seems like he's pretty happy he left. I would say he's definitely happy the way that turned out.
Right. Yeah. Right. Got a Super Bowl. Yeah.
He never left as a free agent. Like he was traded away, and I'm sure the team. I'm sure he had input like, please trade me away, or at least destination location. But some good points. Yeah, maybe the Lions aren't so great. But it is great. Is your podcast The Real Deal? And I want to get the scoop on how that all started and when you transitioned from just being a fan to being a fantasy football or fantasy sports manager to wanting to share your views and share what you had to say with not just your circle of people but the whole world.
Yeah. Started when I was writing. I used to write for a blog. and a couple blogs actually, and a couple websites. So that's when it came back, like, to me to get back into like just wanting to do this, wanting to do some content creating and things like that. Because I was always, when growing up, everybody always said, "Oh, you could be a radio show, you could do." Do radio, or you could do this. But at that time, I didn't really take it seriously. I just kind of loved to debate, with my friends and things like that. So, growing up, you go to college and you're partying, doing things. You're just not really taking it seriously. But I've always enjoyed the sports realm. So then when podcasting started coming around, I got to credit my wife for pushing me to. She said, you love talking sports, you love, debating it and things like that. Won't you turn it into something like writing? So, like I said, a couple websites just hit me up, said, "Hey, you want to do some writing for us?" So I did that for a couple of years, and then on one of those blog sites, one of those websites, they were starting a podcast, and they wanted a couple of the writers to do podcasts. So I did that, jumped on there, and then I enjoyed it. I was like, okay, this is what I should have been doing anyway years ago. And then so I had a podcast. It was called The Takeover first, and that was where I had a co-host on there. So we did that for a couple of years, and then I transitioned to doing it by myself after a couple of years. And so then I reformatted it, called it The Real Deal with Courtney Harden. So I did that on another different network. Did that for a couple more years, and then that disbanded. And at that time, I was doing podcasts almost every day, and I got burnt out. And I always tell people, burnout is for real, because you can really get, you're not there anymore. It's almost like you're just putting content out just to put it out there. And I wasn't happy about it, but it was just doing it just to do it, thinking I'm missing something. So I took a full year off. I think that was 2018. I took a year off from podcasting, but then I got the itch again, 2019. Then network I'm on now, BS3 network that I'm on now, Ben Soto, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, you want to get back into podcasts? I'm reformatting my network, and I'm looking for people to jump on." So at that time, instead of taking that year off, I just said, yes, I want to go back and do this. So I got back on The Real Deal, like I said, reformatted it again. And now since 2019 of the reformat, it's been going strong since. So that's where the love and where I started my podcast.
And I think, that year off seems like it was good to maybe recapture that love and that passion.
Yeah.
Yes. But it also seems like good to kind of figure, okay, what are the limits, and know what you can do. And it seems like since you've returned, you've had a more, you're still a regular schedule, but something that you can manage and work with. And it seems like you've been able to just continue on without having that burnout.
Yes, and I take breaks now. I'll take weeks off sometimes. And now, the show usually, the regular show airs on Saturday afternoons normally, but I'll have like a couple of different bonus episodes throughout the week, especially if, I'm working with guests. And if they say, "Oh, I could do it on a Wednesday night or a Thursday morning," I'll adjust and say, "Okay, I'll find some time so we can do it." So so I'll have shows a couple times a week, but yeah, I'll take breaks. And there's weeks sometimes I'll just don't want to. It's like, I know I'm gonna take a week off or take a few days off, and then I'll jump back on. So yeah, I do have a regular schedule, but it's not what it was. It's not 6-7 days a week on top of working, on top of having your job, on top of family and life in general, and you don't have time. You got to find balance, and I think that's one thing, is finding balance of doing podcasting and other things. So and work and life. So yeah, I definitely but I really enjoy it, and just pushing it as far as I can.
So we're going to go back to the Lions real quick. I don't know if you thought the Lions would be the team we talk about the most, but apparently, like, they're on Hard Knocks this year. I know some people are really excited, like, especially to see Dan Campbell on Hard Knocks. And I don't know if you saw the video today. I'd be more excited to see Jamal Williams on Hard Knocks, but
yes,
I think that it seems like that's starting tomorrow. He said Mr. Scamper is coming in with the corrections, so it starts tomorrow. But yeah,
pumped about it.
yeah, definitely. It seems like a lot of people are really excited, specifically for this team and this coaching staff with the Lions. So
yeah, they should be improved. They'll be a little bit improved. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but they definitely should be improved.
Oh yeah, and Yeti just mentioned he's crying with passion. Love to see it. I think he's referencing Jamal Williams in the video from today. An
Yeah.
inspirational speech, try and lift up his teammates, and the importance of the details you do in training camp will affect you in the season. And
Yes.
so get to work today, and that the physical work, the mental work, I think is so huge in sports.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. You definitely need that mental as much as the physical. I totally agree.
Yeah, good leaders, especially coaches, but also leaders can come from other players too. But good influences on the rest of the team.
Yes. Yep. Definitely.
Which leads to the next question: what were your biggest influences when it came to things like content creation and the podcasting?
Yeah, that's a good question. Just when growing up, just watching Sports Center, I can go back to that, from Stuart Scott to Keith Overman to, I mean, there's so many different ones. I mean, Susie Colbert from way back, Dan Patrick, and Keith Overman and Linda Cohn. So starts from there. That Sports Center was it. That was life. We were watching high school when we were even supposed to
Waking up in the morning,
waking up in the morning. It was on at 6 a.m. to noon, and it was constant. But it was like the same thing over and over. But we're watching it, and I remember skipping class or going into like study hall and watching Sports Center and watching in the lunchroom, Sports Center. So that's where it comes from for the first. But then with podcasting, I mean, there's so many. Right, like today, there's so many good podcasts. Like I love the Bill Simmons podcast. I love Richard Deitch, and he does the sports media podcast. I love that because I love the sports media of a lot of the different things too. I mean, those are just some. I mean, Bomani Jones and Jamel Hill, Michael Smith. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So those are some of my favorite ones that I listen to on a daily basis. But then I listen to a lot of different other genres. Like I listen to some UFC podcasts and listen to boxing podcast. I listen to a lot of different, especially sports, a lot of different genres.
I think you can take away, even if if you're not necessarily planning to do boxing episodes, but you can not necessarily the content they're saying, but like the way they're presenting and how do they interview, how do they question their guests, how do they have discussions. You can kind of learn and take influence from anything you watch and absorb.
Yeah, and I think that's what I usually do. Like I'll watch certain shows or certain podcasts, and then because I'm always trying to improve on my interviewing skills, and I've been complimented about your questions are great, but I take pride in that, to listen to some of the ones who are really good, who ask a lot of good questions and how they present the question, and listen to their guests and kind of adjust, like, okay, this question is not as relevant. So, but they open up something else and they think of questions on the fly when you need to. So I always try to listen to certain ones of how they address their questions to their guests, which I find fascinating with that. And then I was like, I can use this type of idea and then try to present it in my own way too. So yeah, it's like I said, there's so many good podcasts, even fantasy football podcast and fantasy sports podcasts. I watch those, listen to those. I mean, I always got Spotify on and YouTube, and a lot of people got YouTube channels, and I'm a big Marvel comic book fan too. So they listen to that podcast and their live streams, and so there's so much content. You don't even have time to listen to everything, but I try to listen to as much as I can.
For sure. And I think just the idea with the being a good host is, the mix between being prepared, like you're saying, like it seems like those influences of yours, a lot of really good questions. So well researched in advance and coming in with, good baggage and ammunition, well prepared. But like you said, also you're having a conversation. So, speak to people, like saying, really listen and not just be waiting for the response time.
Right, exactly. And I think that's one thing with my show, I try to, listen to the guest, because I mean, they took the time to come in and want to do the podcast. So listen to the guest, they tell their story, and then you go from there. So I always have a conversation with them. I don't even do it. That's why I usually tell the guests it's not an interview. This is more of a conversational. It's going to be a conversation. So we're going to have a conversation about whatever you have, whatever you want to talk about. I just want them to open up, and we go through. Sometimes we go through like the regular how they got started, and what they do now, their day to day, and everything. But then we get into some topics, get into some subjects, and then we go from there. And like I said, sometimes it's a half hour, hour and a half, depending on where the conversation goes.
Yeah, I think that I guess in case anyone's looking to start out with their own podcast or their own show, maybe we've kind of already started with some good advice there in terms of especially with a guest, and how do you not so much handle a guest, but how do you prepare for a guest, and also how again, we were saying converse and think about it as a discussion more than an interview, and that's how you best spend time with the guest. I guess what I'm trying to say. Anyway,
I think sometimes you can have like a pre-recording, or not even that. Just hit them up on Zoom and say, hey, let's talk a little bit. Like I had one guest. She said, well, let's conversate. Let's get to know each other first before we record to do the show. And I thought that was a fascinating idea. I was like, sure. So we set up a Zoom meeting, and we kind of just had a conversation just like we're talking on the phone. And that's where it was like a pre-interview. And then we're like, okay, now we can definitely. So it was get to know each other a little bit before, and even didn't have to do that. It's just more of kind of like what you did. Just said, hey, let's conversate. Let's have on DMs and email, and that's how I do with my guests. I'll email them if I can find their email. I'll do email. I know a lot of people don't use email no more, but some still do. Like some people still do, and they prefer that. If I send a Zoom link, I send it to their email, or I get on their social media, get in their DMs, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, and then ask them, hey, I'm a big fan. I'd love to invite you to my podcast. Here's a link to my podcast. Let to be a guest, and this is what it's about. And a lot of times they hit you back saying if they can't do it, or if they can, here's some times. So yeah, I think that's a real good advice. Like just go ahead and reach out. I mean, social media, that's what it's for. That's one good thing about social media. It's there to connect, whether it's whatever, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it's there to connect with people. And the worst somebody can say is no, and then you just move on. I don't get offended by someone that says no. I know sometimes some people say, I want to get these big guests. No, start with somebody that you might know, and then you can get into if you want to get into the bigger guests. But just reach out to them, go through the proper channels, and reach out to them. Be professional about it, and then you start getting your guest list will start getting bigger and better. And it's your podcast. You ask, you want whoever you want on there, you try to get on there.
And I know for myself, one thing I'll do sometimes, especially if it's for this show in particular, if it's a guest that I'm not familiar with, haven't had discussions with before, I'll send them, this was my most recent episode. That way they get a feel of this is kind of what to expect. And so when they get the show sheet full of questions, maybe not a big shock. It's kind of so they're more accustomed to. So that's another trick to kind of, if you've got material already, and maybe that's part of the advice too, if you want to be able to go and get guests already having some shows in your back pocket and say, well, this is example, kind of brings a bit more legitimacy, might help your cause to have someone come on.
Yeah, because you can send your page. Like I've sent my Instagram page. Say, hey, if you want, can follow me. Or a lot of times I'll follow them first, and then I'll DM them, and then ask them. And if they ask like, hey, what's your podcast about? Here, follow my page here. Like you said, follow this link here, or here's my last few shows. As you said, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, send those links, because they're either going to listen to it. They might find it. And some guests, they're just excited that, oh my goodness, somebody asked me to be interviewed. Yes, I would love to do that. I've had guests say that. It's like I never get asked to interview. I've had guests on my show where it's their first time being on a podcast, and it's almost like nobody's asked me to be on a podcast before, and I'm fascinated by that. I'm excited. So I'm all about that. So I'm all for that. So I think that's super helpful to do that when you get someone that you might like their content and their work, and you ask them to come on the show because you want to know a little bit more about them and their story. they're very excited to share because people love to talk. So if they get a platform they can just talk about themselves, I think that's great to do.
Yeah, especially if it's people who aren't used to it, it
Yeah,
lets them get their
right.
voice out there and gives them exposure, and just like their thoughts get to be shared with the rest of the world. So I'm sure you'd get some satisfaction with that as well, knowing that you're really helping someone who doesn't necessarily have the voice to
Yeah.
where people wouldn't hear these people's thoughts unless they were on your podcast.
Right. Because I just had Serenity Douglas. She's a track and field host. I had her on a couple weeks ago, and I had reached out to her before, and I did get a response. So I saw her on TV. I was like, "Oh my god, I did reach out." So let me just try to do it again. She was just excited just to. She was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm the one usually doing the interviewing. For someone to reach out to me as a sports reporter." To want to hear my story, she was just said, "When do I sign up?" She was just excited, and I was like, "Whenever you got time, so we can do this in a couple of days." Uh, I followed her for the last year or two. Just enjoyed her work, what she did, and so I kind of listened to a couple of things. But it was her first. She said it was her first time really on a podcast. Really, she has her own, but it's the first time she's been interviewed. So I kind of listened to some of her things, and like I said, that's the research you do for your guests. You just kind of research and maybe listen to what they've done, if they have a podcast or if they had something else, or reporter and everything. And then that's when you start getting those questions, and you send them the questions, and she was excited. She was like very excited. We talked for a good hour just about, that's when the World Track and Field was going on, it was right after. So we had a lot to talk about. So it was just perfect timing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think in terms of the advice, we're kind of layering it on here because I want to focus back something really specific. You said that you had messaged her and then get a response, and instead of giving up, you decide I'm going to try again. Right? I think the lesson in perseverance, not just for specifically reaching out to guests, but with gaining traction with your podcast, and to just keep persevering and keep going, I think is really key as well.
Yeah, definitely. And so I reached out, I think, and then it was like 3-4 months later, I almost I was just going through. I think I was just going through my DMs, and just I was like, "Oh my goodness, I forgot." I said, "Let me just try her again, or if I can find her an email or something." And, like I said, you don't want to be a stalker or anything like that. So if I did it 2 or 3 times and I don't get a response, like, okay, then I move on. But if you really want to persevere and really push to get not even just guests, just in general, push out your material, you're going to continue to keep doing it. So yeah, I mean, a couple of times, and they might not. So some people don't even read their DMs, don't even read their messages, because they might be getting creepy messages or something like that. So they're like, I turn my notifications off. I don't want to get that. And they might think it's someone, like I said, someone stalking them, someone really being a jerk about it or anything like that. But if you, like I said, if you do it in a professional manner, professional way, they will respond. A lot of people will respond. So I think that, persevere. If you really want that guest on there, keep pushing it. Sooner or later, you might get them.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great lesson. And just again, back to the hard knocks, since it's a hard habit to kick, right? Yeti's mentioned his favorite hard knock scene is actually the Texans. Bill O'Brien comes out and goes, "Oh, hell yeah, Rick Ross, turn that fecal matter up."
Yes,
Apparently he's dying
I
laughing.
remember that. I mean, it's hard knock season, so we know football is here. Preseason, I mean, it started last week, the Hall of Fame game, but the games and preseason start this week. So yeah, hard knocks is here. NFL season's here. We're excited. College football is coming up. It's gonna be. I'm definitely excited.
So obviously, I think people know you love sports. You've already kind of detailed that quite a bit. But is there anything that maybe your listeners on the pod, or certainly us at Going for Two, don't know about you and that you'd like to share?
I think they know just about everything. When I heard that question, I couldn't think of anything because I'm like an open book. So I share a lot of different things on the podcast. Mostly family and friends knows just about everything. I couldn't really think of anything. Like some of the things I do, like I said, I love Marvel, but people do know that because I do podcast about Marvel movies and comics. Growing up, collecting comic books and just enjoyed it. Now they've turned it into the MCU. So I'm really plugged in there. Like I said, sports. I do like reading. more like a lot of sport books, but spy, and I know we're gonna talk about that later on, the favorite books and things like that. Yeah, there's not too much that people don't really know. So I mean, if they ask, I'll tell them. That's so that's what it is.
Well, I just thought of something. So talk about superheroes, and
Mm.
if you could have one superpower, what would that be? I don't know if
Ooh.
you've thought of that before.
No, I never thought of that. I mean, I'll say that some of my favorite superheroes, Spider-Man. I mean, that's my favorite. Maybe his Spidey sense, to have that ability and what the agility and things like that, to have that. I know some people, they like to just think they I can disappear. Super strength would be a good one. So Incredible Hulk, things like that. But I guess having that Spidey sense, just that they call it the Peter Tingle now, as they call it, and everything. So, but Spidey sense is what it is. That just having that and being able to, feel things and everything. I think that would be a really good, to have that type of super strength, super power. But he says super strength, Captain America, that type of thing. I think that would be a really good speed, maybe, some good superhero powers.
Super speed, super strength, or Spidey sense. They have to be alliterations, whatever the power is.
Yeah, you have to. Yes, you gotta have that, because there's certain level. I mean, I can break that down. There's certain levels of super strength, and superpowers and natural powers, and you can have like the Flash. You can be fast and speed. Like you said, Incredible Hulk. He's just got beyond superhuman strength, and everything too. So yeah, like you said, there's a lot of breakdown when it comes to superheroes.
And even things that seem like on the surface. Like I'm a big fan of Cyclops from the X-Men.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
what's his power? He shoots laser beams out of his eyes. Well, it's
Yeah.
not really that. His eyes are a portal to another dimension that is pure kinetic energy, right? So it's like, yeah,
Yes.
effectively he shoots laser beams out of his eyes, but Marvel's creative with their stories, that's for sure.
Oh my goodness, yeah, they are. And speaking of that, Wolverine is another. I mean, it's one of that's my those, like Spider-Man, Wolverine, Hulk, Cap. There's so many, but Wolverine, like with the adamantium claws. Uh, yeah, X-Men. Fantastic Four. I could just go on and on and on.
Well, I guess we could continue going on. Just a quick question here: have you ever read Wolverine's first ever appearance in the Marvel comics?
If I did, it was a long time ago, and I can't remember. But
It's actually an Incredible Hulk comic. That was his
yes,
first appearance,
yes,
and
yes.
then they later brought him in as part of the X-Men. But it's
Yeah, because it was a
Incredible Hulk story.
crossover. Yep, it was a crossover to the Incredible Hulk. I do remember that. Yes, crossover to Incredible Hulk, and then he's been on in a lot of comics with Incredible Hulk too. And then, as you said, like the story of him getting into the X-Men. I know the movies, they found him, and so he had the mutant gene, and he didn't know who he was really, and all that. So, but it's very interesting that Wolverine and Hulk were connected way back in the comic books, and and then they make the comic books about him, movies about them.
Yeah. I mean, Wolverine again was just like supposed to be a side character in these Hulk
Yeah.
stories, and then they later, okay, well, we're doing this X-Men revamp. We want to bring some new X-Men in, and this side Wolverine character seemed to be popular. People are asking, can you bring him back? Like, this guy seems intense. The claws, the animal instincts, like such a great warrior character. And so, by popular demand, is maybe the most popular X-Men, to be honest.
Yeah, the most popular. And then when Hugh Jackman became Wolverine, he, certain characters of, and especially in the MCU, certain people that embodies it. He was one of them. Chadwick Boseman was Black Panther.
Yeah.
I think Tom Holland, Iron Man. You think of Robert Downey Jr. Chris Evans is Captain America. Yeah, I mean, the list goes on. Like those type of characters, you say, okay, they embody what that character is. Like, to me, Tom Holland was Peter Parker. He, even though they had so many different iterations of Spider-Man, to me, Tom Holland that's what Peter Parker was. Spider-Man was who he was. I mean, I love Toby. Andrew was good, but to me, it was Tom Holland. He embodied what Peter Parker Spider-Man was. So yeah, there was those type of characters. You think, so Hugh Jackman was Wolverine.
And to the Tom Holland argument, and I don't even know if it's necessarily because he acted better than Toby or Andrew. I think it was just written better, right? Like the
Yeah,
writers kind of had the comedy of who Peter Parker is. He's a smart, funny kid, and I think they really got it with these more than they did the other ones necessarily.
Yeah, he's a smart aleck. You said funny, and they kept him. I think the difference between those and the Toby and the Andrew Garfield ones was that Tom Holland stayed a kid. Like he was, they kept Spider-Man as a kid. They let him grow as a kid. I think with those, they just kind of rushed right through it. Like they were kids, and then they're in college, and then it's like, okay, this is just too fast of a story. But the stories were so much better with Tom Holland. Like I said, nothing against the other two because I enjoyed them, but I just think that the Tom Holland, they to me, they finally got who Peter Parker really was, and he was a smart aleck. He was a kid. He was funny. That's who Peter Parker is.
I think again, it shows that acting is obviously really important, but once you get the threshold of actors, the writing and the screenplay of a movie or of a TV show is really what's going to separate it and put it over the top or not.
Yes, definitely, totally agree.
So obviously you've got a podcast where you do interview people, so this really does apply to that. So we'll apply specifically to The Real Deal. Do you have like an all-time wish list guest that, like, let's say we'll go back to powers. If you had the magical power to, you can interview one person all time ever for The Real Deal, who would that be?
Ooh, this was tough because the list could go on and on and on. But if I had to pick just one person to interview, it would be Michael Jordan. Just to, the history, the legacy of who he is, and one of the greatest, if not the greatest athlete of all time, in any genre. It's arguably you could say Muhammad Ali and Tiger Woods and others, but Michael Jordan to me, because he was growing up, that's who I was really a big fan of. And then, the sneakers and just everything. It's all about the legacy. But there's so many others like Serena Williams, and I talked about Barack Obama. there was so many different ones. But if I had to just narrow it down, it would be Michael Jordan.
With Jordan, the impact not just on basketball, making it a global game. Now almost every country on earth, or a good chunk of them, have a basketball league, a professional basketball league of some sort. So I feel like soccer and football is always going to be the global sport. It's so easy. All you need is a ball, kick it around, right? Like it's just so easy to play. So it'll be so easy to access for everyone kind of across the globe. But it really does feel like basketball is kind of creeping up to be that next sport that's just in the conscious of every country. Like cricket's huge in India and Pakistan, not so huge in North America. Like, it's even pretty big in England, right? And then baseball is big in those other countries, but there's never really an overlap. Whereas a lot of those countries will play basketball, though.
Yeah, you pick up a basketball, you see, kids and just playing basketball. And maybe not so much what it used to be, but there's still kids out there playing basketball everywhere. You said globally, and it's a global sport. Like the NBA has become so big, and so it's such a global sport. It was just I just think that the NBA itself, and they do such a tremendous job of making it globalized, and the players are so popular overseas, and then you got all the international players who are some of the better players too now in the leagues now, from Dirk Nowitzki to Yao Ming to there's so many.
Well, Doncic right now.
Luka, Luka's one of the top players in the league, period. So right now,
how did we forget the two-time current MVP Jokic?
Yeah, and Nikola Jokic, yeah. So there's so many, the Joel Embiid, and it's fascinating of how much talent. And Manu Ginobili, so Tony Parker. The list goes on and on. Tony Kukoc. So it's globalized. I think it kind of started with the Dream Team when they were like a rock band, and then how fascinating they were. And they dominated in the Olympics, and then it just became globalized after that. And then the NBA just took off even more with the globalization. People they know who can't forget Giannis too. Antetokounmpo, can't forget him. He won the championship, and he's a two-time MVP also. Won the finals 2 years ago. But people know these guys, and women too. They know all these players in WNBA. They know all these players, and they know who LeBron James is. And they know who Steph Curry is. They know all these other players. So yeah, it's huge.
And I think with MJ obviously being a big part of that globalization of basketball is huge. But I think his impact on sports, and for anyone who hasn't seen the Michael Jordan documentary, to really get into the psychology of MJ, and I think a lot of what almost every sport is doing now with sports psychology can kind of be owed to how he would kind of do it for himself, though, like in his own head. And so in to your kind of credit, that would be great to just pick his brain about like competition in sports in general. And that would be a fascinating interview. I definitely want to watch that episode for sure.
Oh my goodness. If I could get him, if I got Michael Jordan, like I would retire. Or I was just like, I've done everything.
Be inspired by him.
Yeah. But if I got Jordan, because he doesn't do interviews. He hardly does. He didn't even do interviews even when he was playing. So rarely. He trusted a few people. Ahmad Rashad was like the one guy that he would do interviews with. Ahmad Rashad was part of his entourage too. So he would do those type of interviews. But even today, he doesn't do many interviews, and being an owner. But every time he speaks, he's fascinated. You said that's a good point. Sports psychology to get into his brain and what he was thinking on The Last Dance. And now you have Tom Brady does his own thing, like The Last Dance. Derek Jeter now, that's been good. I've been watching that. So everybody's now thinking, oh, okay, we could get into what these guys were really thinking when they were playing. And people might not like it. Some of their teammates might not like it, and some of their opponents might not like it. But this is just how he feels. So I would love to pick his brain just to say from the competitive standpoint. This guy was one of the most competitive people. He would just from The Last Dance, he would try to beat you in anything. So it didn't matter what it was, cards or basketball, whatever. He would make up things just to keep himself, competitive. So yeah, it would be fascinating just to get him on the show.
And I'm going to talk a lot about fantasy football, 45 minutes in, and on the Going for Two Live network, it's usually get to fantasy at some point. But one last question is there a revelation that you've gotten in your life that you wish, I wish I would have thought of that earlier, wish that would have hit me earlier?
Oh yeah, we were talking about it earlier. Just wish I would have did this years ago. Podcast, not even just podcasting, just pursuing radio, trying to get on TV. Maybe when I was in college to do radio there, and that's where it would have started. Because if I'd have did it back then, yes, I'm here what I'm thinking I'm supposed to be doing now. But if I'd have known back then, maybe I could have just kept pushing more forward with that. Yes, I wish I could have really done that. Told my younger self, yeah, you should have continue to keep doing, started back then to do like radio or TV or something like that. Just get on radio broadcast, because now you would have been even more advanced maybe in podcasting.
So the fantasy football talk, and I think every year the fantasy football community, a big moment is the Scott Fish Bowl. And so congratulations, Courtney, you made it into the Scott Fish Bowl this year. So
thank you.
Is there anything you want to share about experiences, stories about the Fish Bowl, anything you want to talk about here?
Yeah, shout out to Scott Fish, and just getting that invite. Jeff Lambert, he I think he had a drawing, and my name got picked, and he said, "You want to do it?" I was like, "Yeah, I've been trying to get in for the last few years, and I know it's hard because this is the biggest of them all for when it comes to fantasy football." And getting into this, I thought it was great. It was couldn't ask for any better. It was just connecting with a lot of people, and the fantasy community is huge. I know a lot of people, but there was some I didn't even know, and then just to be in to connect and follow, and doing the draft. I thought the draft was excellent. It was long, but because it's you have 7 hours to make your pick, so it's a slow draft. But I've done slow drafts before, so I was kind of used to it. So that was not anything that I had issues with, but it was just connecting with the fantasy community. I thought that was one of the best things about the Scott Fish Bowl, and really just talking fantasy sports or fantasy football in general. And listening to I know they had the podathon, they do that. I thought that was amazing. And I'm in the group chat with my league, meeting them, following them. That was a lot of fun, and just the trash talk. That's always good. And we were trash talking about our teams. We thought what it is, how it is. You draft your team, like, well, I got the best team. And on paper, I had the best team. And then we talked about our regular teams of, if they're like, I'm an Eagles fan, they're a Cowboys fan, that's going to be a problem. Or a Giants fan, it's going to be a problem. But those were some of the I think those were some of the best moments of the Scott Fish Bowl experience.
And part of the, every year, it's each division is themes, and it's kind of, you connect people through interests outside of football. This year, it's the cities. So I know for some people it was, picking real cities where they're close to, and realizing how many people in the fantasy football world are kind of so close to you, and kind of realizing that. And others were fictional cities, and everyone connected through those things. So what division did you end up in?
That was, let me see, because I had it up too. Just wanted to, so I was in. It was the Neverland Peter Pan division. Okay. So I didn't get it to a city. I was trying to get to the Philadelphia one, but the Neverland Peter Pan, which was, it was a lot of people. I mean, a lot of good drafters in this one. So that was a lot of fun.
Does fantasy football help keep us young forever, kind of like Peter Pan?
Yes. I hope so. And I had the second to last pick, so I had to really dig deep and dive. But I love the Scott Fish Bowl. People don't understand. Like I said, this brings like a lot of people from the fantasy community. Like, I'm talking people from everywhere. And then, Matthew Berry's and, all those guys. I mean, they come in and do this. And like I said, he's doing a tremendous job with what he's doing, and it's for charity and everything too, and I was just like honored and thrilled to get in.
Yeah, I'll shout out, because you mentioned the pod fund, and I'll shout out Going for Two, just like the Going for Two family and listeners. We raised over $2,000 for that podathon segment that Jeff and Ryan were on for. So that was great to be part of the Going for Two family for that.
Yeah, that was really good. I know the hard work that they've done in the background, and just pushing for that, and the charitable work that the fantasy community, it's great. Like, it's just like anything else. You do have some bad apples in it, but for the most part, a lot of people are really really connected. They're really helping each other out, and because even we're Going for Two, like we have our chat. And we ask questions all the time, like who to sit, who to start, and they're always helpful. And I think even just raising money for such a great cause, that's the best part of it all.
Yeah, the connected. That's what, again, you mentioned Scott Fish. Like, that's part of the message he always tries to send. And I know for myself, I was in the Letterkenny division. Actually, previous episode of Press Coverage was the first time I had multiple guests on. I had brought a few members of the division on just to talk about. At that point, the draft was still going, so we could talk about the picks as we were making them. So I actually, this year, lucky enough, my division actually had a T-shirt. I don't know, last year, Incubus. Okay, Incubus is probably not going to get the T-shirt as like all the other big bands. Last year it was music artists, so Incubus, a cool band, good enough to make it into this Fishbowl, not enough to get a T-shirt. So I was really happy
T-shirt, right?
Get the Letterkenny T-shirt this year, so I had to rep it. I didn't get it for the last episode. That would have been maybe more fitting, but I thought this was a good time to premiere it.
Yes, and I got to get my T-shirt too, because I know that they have the actual T-shirts now, so I got to definitely get one and represent and try to win. That's another big key. Just and it was hard because, like I said, there's so many, but just try to have fun, try to win, and just connecting. I mean, I follow so many of them now, and they follow me too, and just to be, like I said, just to be able to participate. I was, like I said, like very excited to get that invite, and Scott Fish emailed, and I jumped right on and had to read the rules, because, like I said, it's different. It's a different format as well. There's a lot of different ways, and I'm so used to just standard drafts, but I was like, okay, I got to adjust to how to draft, like tight end heavy, and it's not as running back heavy as other drafts are. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just something like points per first down, you're not always seeing that in the league, and then you add that as one of the complications and wrinkles as they do with all the others.
Yeah. Because even something like this with this draft, it's like they say, because I had asked Jeff, I said, okay, what am I looking for? I read the rules and I know the format, but what am I looking for? He just said, make sure if you do get a tight end early and a quarterback early. I was like, okay, this is totally different from getting running backs and then a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So, being at the end of the draft, I'm like, okay, I got to get a quarterback because the first pick was Josh Allen in our draft. I think the first 5 picks were quarterbacks: Burrow, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Herbert, and Josh Allen. And then I was like, okay, and Kyler Murray went, so I got Russell Wilson in the 11th pick. So I was like, okay, I got to get an established quarterback very quickly.
Yeah. So who did you end up with?
I got my first few picks. I got Russell Wilson, Austin Eckler, Devontae Adams, Montgomery, got Keenan Allen, Goddard, I got Goff. So those were the first. Thielen, Noah Fant, Tyler Boyd. So those were the first 10, 11 picks.
Yeah, I also got Eckler in the second round, so I was feeling that. He's a good, because you still get the points per reception and the points per first down. Yeah. So a guy like Eckler seemed like he made a lot of sense as your anchor RB in the second round.
Yes. Yep.
And actually, you did what I did because I went Mahomes Eckler, you went Wilson Eckler, so you did like the cross division stack.
Yes, had to do the stack, and then he was just sitting there. I'm like, because the pick before they picked Brady, so I'm like, okay, Eckler's here. I got my quarterback. Yes, could have went Aaron Rodgers, but I said, let me get Eckler, and then Devontae Adams comes around. Like, okay, now I have a quarterback, running back, receiver. Now we can just go from there. we go from there.
Yeah. So next fantasy question is, what are your thoughts on the term zero RB as a drafting strategy?
I don't like it. You got to get your running backs. You have to get running backs. I mean, they're the premium, right? Like they're the premium of fantasy sports, or fantasy football. So, yeah, there's been years where you're like, okay, I'm not getting any running backs. I'm just going to go receiver, maybe quarterback, or get 2-3 receivers. But then you're left with scraps of running backs. So I think in almost every draft I've been in, I think the first picks are always running backs usually. So I think you got to go running back heavy for the most part. I guess depending on your format. But if you can get your top running backs early, then you could go and get the rest of your positions afterwards. But if you get a top running back, I think you're good to go.
I do have the tendency to agree with you in the fact that, look at the Scott Fishbowl, right? Jeff's words, quarterback and tight end, that's where the scoring is, and we still took a running back in the second round because we running backs exactly. That
much. Right. And then there's certain positions where there's like the wide receivers is deep. It's always been that, and for years. So if you could get a top wide receiver on top of a running back, they said, I think this is our mentality. We're thinking running back, but Eckler, as you said, somebody like Austin Eckler, PPR, point per reception, you're going to try to get that. If Chris McCaffrey, if he's healthy, guys like that will help because they said they get that half a point extra or a full point depending on the league you're in. It's always good to get those running backs that can catch out of the backfield.
So next question is, what is your favorite league format?
I'm a standard. I love just a regular. I know there's dynasty leagues. There's all these other leagues, DFS. I do like DFS, but I'm a standard 12-team league type. I mean, that's how I started as, it was 12 teams you draft. So I'm more into that than anything else. So some of the leagues I'm in, it's a 12 team. Like I'm in a podcast league now that we just started last year, the Real Deal Podcast League with another person that has the Real Deal name too. So we did a league of certainly a lot of different podcasters, and they were asking for this year, can we add some more players to it? And I'm like, 12 is just the standard. That's just a good number. Not 10, not 8. 10's not bad, but 8, you just get a bunch of great players. And so there's really no competition. But 12 is a good standard. So he was like, well, we can make it 14. 14's okay. But if you get 16, I know Jeff did 16. He's done a 16 team drafts, but I'm more of a standard PPR type of guy. That's my favorite leagues.
Well, going for two writers league, we're doing another 16 team league again this year. So
I didn't get into it last year. I was like, 16 is just, and I had the last pick, and I'm like, nah.
Yeah, well, again, we could fill 16 people, so yes, clearly,
you could do
the
it.
man was there.
Yes.
Now, is there like a rule or a certain scoring setting or just type of setting that you feel like you have to have in every league?
I like PPR, but I like when you can have, like, the format is 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 receivers, tight end, and a kicker. That's it. And so standard rules, maybe 6 points for a touchdown, just things like that. Full point for PPR, those type of rules. So yeah, I was just said just a more standard rules leagues. Those are the ones I enjoy. There's certain ones. There's certain other leagues I might get into where they don't have like PPR, or which is tough. but I do prefer if it's PPR standard scoring. -2 for maybe turnovers, -2 points for that, interceptions, fumbles. Then added bonus if you like kickoff returns, punt returns. I'm cool with that because extra points, like extra points. But the one thing I don't like when you have like your scores like 80.4. No, I don't like the decimals. I don't want any of that. Even though it could help you. Like if you win, you have like 100.4 to 100.2 and you win. I just like a standard 100 points or 90 points or something like that. But sometimes you might need
no decimal scoring, because I know you can have that setting where like you can remove decimal scoring, and you have to kind of, if you whatever you'd fall short if you don't hit the point. Like, so if you got to 87 yards, you'd only get 8 points, not 9.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So if you get, so I've been in leagues like that, which I don't mind it, but I'd rather just have like, because you have these scores 130.8 to 120.2. It's like, where does 0.2 come from? Where does this 0.5 come from? So yeah, I like the standard scoring.
Fair enough. Now we're gonna get to more history back. Well, it could be modern history. Could be a player that's still playing now. But who's your all-time fantasy QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1, and tight end 1?
This was a good question. This had me thinking like, man, I got to go back, because even when I started playing in the late 90s, I had to think like, okay, there's been so many, and I was going by years, but if we went like all time, I think my QB1 would probably be, Peyton Manning put up a lot of big numbers, especially 2013 when he put up, I had to look this up, he put up like 5,400 yards passing, 55 touchdowns. So he was there. I probably would go with him, but then Brady, the one year when he threw for 50 touchdowns, and then he just did it just recently again. Last season, I think he had almost 50. I think he did have 50 touchdowns. So if I had to pick one, I think it would be Peyton Manning, but they're just slightly over, Tom Brady and even Patrick Mahomes too, because he's still putting up huge numbers.
It wouldn't be the first time people debated Manning versus Brady, after all.
Yeah. Now I would pick Brady over Manning when it comes to totality of a career. I know that's always a debate too, that you said, but I think for fantasy purposes, I would go. I think Peyton Manning. Just for that year, he put up, for years, he put up a lot of big numbers. So he'd be my QB1. Running back, I gotta go Marshall Falk. Just so over LT. I know LaDaine Tomlinson was that, but Marshall Falk, in the years he had, there was a couple of years where you talk about PPR, he put up monster numbers for a couple, like for 2-3 years straight, and just the receptions, the yards. I know Chris McCaffrey's doing it now. But I gotta go Marshall Falk for my RB2 or RB1 all time.
And then wide receiver 1.
Wide receiver 1, it was a toss up because we just saw Cooper Kupp, what he just did. But
that's true.
Yeah, but I gotta go Randy Moss. What he was able to do with certain quarterbacks, but once he got Tom Brady, you really saw the potential. I mean, he was putting up numbers with Randall Cunningham. He put up numbers with Dante Culpepper. So each and every week, now I had Moss. I've had Moss on my team, on a couple of my fantasy teams before, and I mean, he paid so much dividends over the years. He led me to the playoffs and a lot of fantasy leagues. But I definitely got to go with Randy Moss, slightly just over, I would say, over Jerry Rice and what Cup just did too. So,
and I guess we end with a tight end one.
This was a tough one because you got Kelsey now. You had Jimmy Graham. I thought of him, but I got to go with Rob Gronkowski. I think he's the tight end when it comes to fantasy purposes. The 1 year, it was 2011, where he scored 17 touchdowns, and on top of that, he had 90 receptions, over 1,300 yards, and he had a couple rushing touchdowns that same year in 2011. So you talk about the ultimate weapon as a tight end that could put up wide receiver type numbers like a Kelsey. Even if you want to go back, Tony Gonzalez, and so I think, but Gronk, when healthy, he was the guy, I think, when it came to tight ends that put up those monster numbers for fantasy purposes.
And I guess with 2011, his price wouldn't have been that high coming off an okay rookie season. I believe 2010 was his rookie season. So it's not like he was a second round pick like he was every year after 2011 because of that amazing season. So if you drafted him in 2011, you got like the full benefit because of the great value you got on him.
Yeah, that was good point. That was a great value. Getting Gronk his second year in the league, and he puts up those numbers. And yes, he had Tom Brady throwing the football, but I mean, that was just a benefit, extra bonus for him too. So as you can see, he retires when he doesn't think Tom Brady's not his quarterback. He retires. So he's like, yeah. But then even now, he still puts up pretty big numbers, even as he's getting up there in age and all the injuries. But man, that year he put up a lot of huge numbers.
Well, speaking of numbers, I did just look up Marshall Falk's career numbers, and 5 straight years of 100 targets. You'd love any receiver to do that, but I'm looking at his 1999 season, 87 catches, 1,048 yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. Your wide receiver does that, you're probably pretty happy, and then all the other stuff he did on the ground too.
right, exactly. And you said that 2000 year, 1,300 yards, 18 scores, 81 receptions, 830 yards, and additional 8 touchdowns. So you're talking someone that did 26 touchdowns at the running back position. So he was such a versatile back. That's tremendous. You said 81 reception, 800 yards. That's a wide receiver 2 or 3 normally, maybe a wide receiver 1. When it comes to that, but this is from your running back.
Yeah, well, I mean, even like Jonathan Taylor didn't get 26 touchdowns last year, and I mean, he had a pretty crazy touchdown season, and I think he just got to 20, maybe 22.
Yeah, I think he had 20. Yeah, I believe so.
So and even that, we're like, oh, he might not repeat that, and imagine 26. That's pretty insane.
Right, and then I thought of, when I was going through this, I was looking at even Priest Holmes. He had a 2-year run, 2002, 2003. I mean, to back to back like that, and it is tremendous. He put up huge numbers. And LT, LaDainian Tomlinson, I know he's one of the best running backs ever, period. But for fantasy, the numbers he put up in 2003, 1,600 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns, and then coming with 100 receptions, 700 yards, 4 more scores. So yeah, you get those type of numbers from any running back. You're in a good place. On top of, hopefully your receivers are putting up huge numbers as well.
All right, so now we get to the final segment of the show, the high 5 segment. So we're going to do top 5 of 5 different categories. We're going to start us off here. Courtney, who are your top 5 favorite artists or bands? I guess it's last year's Scott Fishbowl theme.
Yes. Now, I had to go back and think okay, I had a couple just automatically. So since I was born, like I said, born in 79, grew up in the 80s and 90s. So 90s hip hop and R&B was huge for me. So one of my favorite artists, Jay-Z, even to this day, even though he doesn't put out a lot of music anymore. But I mean, this guy was the just what he did, for hip hop in general. Just one of the greatest rappers of all time. And the albums he was putting on album like every year. It just seemed like, and you just knew that he got better and better and better each and every year. So Jay-Z was one of my top. And then I had to put Michael Jackson. That's just growing up. My mom used to listen to Michael Jackson all the time. Thriller was the album we would play all the time. So that's just history in the making. So Michael Jackson was one, and Stevie Wonder also. So those are my top three right off the bat. So those, yes. And then I gotta add Wu-Tang Clan, of course, as you know, talk about bands. That was one of my favorite hip hop groups as well. Me and my boys used to think we were Wu-Tang. So there was so many our artists on the crew. It was just not even they were just not in a group. They were like a family. They just so many. So that was one. And then you got to go to R&B. You got to go to Boys to Men. Just one of the greatest groups, R&B groups of all time. Just love like their harmonies and the melodies, and they have some of my favorite songs ever. So those will be. I could have gone on and on, but those are some of my top 5 artists and bands of all time.
Awesome. Earlier, you kind of already alluded to a little bit about your top 5 favorite books, so maybe we can talk about that now.
Yeah, of course. I like to read spies and some spy books and military, those type of things and everything too. So not a particular one, but James Patterson. He writes a lot of spy, but he's an author that wrote a lot of spy, those type of genres of books. So love those. Alex Cross. But then if I wanted to go to sports, the Book of Basketball, Bill Simmons, that was one of my favorite books of all time. The way he broke down the history of basketball from his perspective, a 700-page book, that was tremendous. And then he revamped it and did some more, add to it. I enjoyed that. And The Life by Michael Jordan. I think Michael Jordan's had a lot of books written about him, but The Life is by Roland Lazenby. I've had him on the show before, and the way he had details of Michael Jordan, kind of like The Last Dance, the way he had that, how Michael Jordan, the story he told, I thought was like one of the best stories of. And I've read the Jordan Rules, which was good too, by Sam Smith, but that book of Michael Jordan's life was probably one of the most detailed ones you can ever read. So those are some of my favorite authors and books.
You talk about spy and thriller. Dan Brown is, I guess, a fairly popular author with now I can't even think of it anymore. Inferno's the second one, but there's the first one.
I know what you're talking about.
That's really popular. But his first novel he ever wrote was called Digital Fortress, and that kind of deals a lot with spying and hacking and what the CIA does. So when you said spy novels, that one just kind of came to my mind right away.
Yeah, and then I can't forget. I just thought about it. I had it written down. Just forgot, like the Jason Bourne series, the books.
Right.
Just those books I've read. The Bourne Identity, I've done The Supremacy, Ultimatum, and then even afterwards, I've read a lot of those books. So the Robert Ludlum, he wrote the first series of the books that turned into the movies. Was like I said, I just love those, the suspense, thriller, spy, even the military type. Those things, those are. I love those. I love those.
Tom
books.
Clancy, right? Like
Tom Clancy's another one. Yes. Yeah. He's another one, like I said, James Patterson. There's so many I can't think of off the top, but those are some of my favorite ones I've read.
Well, so the book I just remember the name, the Da Vinci Code. That was the
Da Vinci Code. Yes,
title.
Yes.
I was not. That's it. That's probably what he's most known for. But yeah, Digital Fortress is. I really enjoyed reading that one.
Yeah, and then Alex Cross, and even like those books. Yeah, those are, and there's like series of them, and it's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up with all of them. Like James Patterson, I think he writes like at least 15, 20 books in a year. I was like, where do you find the time? And then I was looking through his bio the other day, speaking of that, just to see what new books he had, because I haven't really picked up anything in a while. He's already got books scheduled for 2023. So they're already done. It's just ready to just be published. So yeah, those are some of my favorites.
That's like, yeah, I guess like that's years in advance of he's got more stories already written than his publishers can even keep up with.
Keep
Which
up,
just
right. It's like a book a month, it seems like.
yeah, well, if you love writing, just keep doing it. He finally found something
That's true. Yeah.
it seems to at least enjoy doing because he does it so much, but B, he seems really good at it.
Yes.
Now we'll get to top 5 favorite films or movies.
Yes, I think I just named a few of those. The Bourne series. I think those first three,
Yeah.
the Identity, Supremacy, and Ultimatum. Love those. Even when they're on TV, watch them still. Like I've never watched them before, but those are some of my favorite ones. We talked about Marvel. I gotta add Endgame and Infinity War. Those are two of my favorite ones. I really just enjoy those. Just for the simple fact of how Marvel got all those movies and put them all together to make it to make sense about it and to end it the way they did in Infinity Endgame, just back to back. It was just, I mean, shout out to Kevin Feige. He would be another one I would love to interview too, just to pick his brain and everything.
How you get invested into every single character. There's a movie or story for someone, so the impact is felt like.
Yep.
Again, end of Infinity War and understanding what you're about to lose, like that impact hit so hard. But then, and then also the return of them at the end of Infinity War is also just sweet.
In game. Yeah. So just as you said, just to have the brain to do that and to think that far in advance, because even now they're going to phase 5 and 6. It's like, can we finish phase 4 first before we get into all these ideas of what you're doing? But I mean, this the brain that have them. So those are a few of them. It's funny. I get comedy. I'm adding the Rush Hours, the first two at least. Those are some of my favorite ones. Just silly comedies. Those Cop Buddy from Beverly Hills Cop down to the Rush Hours. I enjoyed those. And then Star Wars. I mean, the first three are my favorites. I don't have a. It's hard to pick one because I do like. I guess just Return of the Jedi would be my favorite, but then I always change sometimes too. So, but I'll just say the first three. So those are some of my favorite movies. So I probably named like 6 movies, 7 movies. But
well, I mean, like the Star Wars original trilogy, that's just one 6-hour-long movie. That's all.
Yes, that's it. Right. So we could just say that's a 6-hour movie, just like you said, Endgame Infinity Wars was 5 hours. So it's like one 5-hour movie.
So just to, I guess, bring us back to sports with a couple questions. So top 5 favorite game day foods.
Yes, I love this question because I got this was like real quick. So I think burgers is one. That's like one of my all-time favorite foods. Just on game day, without no game day, but burgers is definitely one. Nachos, definitely gotta have nachos on there. Chili, I love making chili on Super Bowl. My wife gets tired of it because I'm always thinking, she said, what are we going to have for Super Bowl? I'll say, I'm making some chili. She's like, we just had it. Like, but I just love making it. And it's always good if we have people over or not. If it's just us two, I'm making a big thing of chili. And that's what I always like to have that for the Super Bowl. So I think that's one. Pizza's another one. That's something we should do with our some of our friends. We've ordered pizza and then chicken wings. Of course, we'll order wings or pizza, or sometimes we make our own wings and then just order pizza. So that was like a game. That's a game day. That was a game day staple for a long time with a couple of my friends back home in upstate New York. So those are my top 5 foods, game day foods.
All right, and we're gonna end with the big one: top 5 favorite sports moments.
Yes. So the very first one is the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. Being a part of that, being a fan for over 35 years or so now, and all the heartbreak, getting close, getting to those NFC Championship games, and 5 straight, and then going to the Super Bowl, losing the Super Bowl in that fashion that they did, but then finally having a run where the city was excited, and then me just living here, being a part of that in 2017 was just like that was the greatest sports moment in my entire life. And seeing it firsthand when they actually won is interesting. Quick story, and I'll get to the other one. When they actually won, it was like you just didn't know. So if they're playing the Patriots, Tom Brady shredded us for 500 plus yards, our defense, but Nick Foles is going toe to toe with him. And I'm scared because, Brady gets the ball with under 2 minutes. I'm like, okay, this is high. I just knew it was going to end this way with Brady getting down the field and scoring and winning. I just didn't have, I didn't, because they couldn't stop him. And then it took that Hail Mary, and I didn't want to celebrate until that ball hit the ground. It was 0 seconds on the clock. So me and my wife just jumping up and down, and I'm outside. We're hearing the car horns and things like that. So I go outside. I'm screaming. I'm running up and down the street, hugging people I don't even know, and slapping high fives with people, and then going to Modell's and getting Super Bowl shirts, and that was just the best in the parade. So yeah, that was that was the best sports moment, just being a part of that and seeing that firsthand. So gotta put that number one. Number two was the Chicago Bulls winning all those 6 championships in 8 years, and their last one, the way Michael Jordan ended it with the shot over Brian Russell. Just being able to see that and them dominating for so many years. Now the Bulls haven't been good since then, but they've had some years that they were okay getting Derrick Rose in those years, and even now they're much better now. So, but
yeah, they were weren't they a top 4 seed in the East this year?
Yeah, they were. Yep, they were. They finished.
I think they were the 3 seed.
They were in the top, but I think they dropped to 6.
Oh, okay.
But making the playoffs, the first time they made the playoffs in years. They lost to the Bucks, but in the first round. But it was
defending champs, right?
Like, defending champs at the time, right. So, but injuries and everything too. That's what hurt them later in the year. But just seeing that, and Michael Jordan, like I said, we talked about that. One of my favorite athletes of all time. I think that was a tremendous sports moment too. I got to go with the '92 Dream Team too. Kind of alluded to that. Right. Them winning the gold medal and the way they did it, the first time professional basketball players were able to play, and to put that type of team, a collection of Hall of Famers like that, and the chemistry, and the Hall of Fame coach Chuck Daly, the chemistry that they had, and the best players on the same team. It's hard to replicate that. I know there's been other teams afterwards that's come close, but when you have names like Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, Clyde Drexler, all these all-time greats, Scottie Pippen, all these all-time greats on one team, that was just fascinating. And then it was, like you said, they were like a rock band, and it was just tremendous to see. So I think that was one of my favorite sports moments. So the number 4 would be Serena Williams winning her 23rd major, and the way she did it, she beat her sister, and then she was pregnant on top of that. Yeah. So I'm a big Serena fan, and just to see her, just the way she was so excellent at what she was doing, like one of the all-time greats of her doing that at that age. This was I think she won in 2016, 2017. So just to see her progress when she won her first one in 99, and she was 17 when she won her first major, and then progressed to win 23 and being one of the greatest tennis player of all time, one of the greatest athletes of all time. I just loved her, loved what she represents and what she does. So that was another one. And my 5th one, it was tough because it was between 2. It was between Usain Bolt and what he did for track and field, and another one was Ken Griffey Jr. We talk about the '98. Talk about the '98 chase. It was Sosa and McGuire, but Griffey was right there with them, and he's one of my favorite baseball players ever. So he gets shafted for what they put up the numbers, but now you look at it back then, McGuire was a cheat. He was a cheat, and then Sosa's been linked to it. So that year, Griffey clean hits 56 home runs, and that chase, and he was part of that whole chase too. So that was fascinating as well. But Usain Bolt just breaking all those records and dominated the way he did in track and field. And now his records, it's going to be tough to break in the 100 and 200. So those are some of my favorite all-time sports moments and memories.
And I think they're some of the greatest athletes of all time link those moments. I mean, directly, like Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, Usain Bolt. They won, and they're three of the greatest athletes ever of all time. But
Yeah.
even the Eagles one, it's tied to a Tom Brady moment, right? And,
Yeah,
and Tom Brady almost won that Super Bowl. It's funny how the Eagles lose that first Super Bowl against Brady and then come back. What I get 13 years later, and they finally kind of get a bit of revenge there.
Yeah, right. And the way the Eagles did it was, Carson Wentz was leading the charge. That was the last time Carson Wentz was really good.
He was that ACL tear against the Rams. He's never been the same since.
Yes, and I was just that year. It felt like this. Us as fans, we can get crazy just like anything else. But that year, they were 11-2. And they were good on offense and defense. And Carson Wentz was having a tremendous year. I think he had 33 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, something like that, going into that Rams game. And he was playing lights out against the Rams too. So, Eagle fans are jumping up. It's like, this is the year. This is the year we're going to win the Super Bowl. We felt that. And once he tears his ACL on the scramble and his leg just gets mangled, and you could just tell there was something wrong. You just knew it was just like our hearts sunk like, there's the luck of being an Eagles fan. And Nick Foles comes in, doesn't look good at all in the beginning. I think that's where some fans forget. The fans that really love Nick Foles, I love Nick Foles for what he's done for the city and what he's done for the Eagles. But I think they get overboard sometimes too with Nick Foles as well.
He looked much better in 2013 than he did at the end of 2017.
Right, exactly.
Till maybe the playoffs.
To the playoffs, right. So he didn't look good. And it was nerve-wracking. It was so, my wife, she follows the Eagles too. So she's like, let's give him a chance. And she loves the underdog. So she's like, let's just give him a chance. And I was like, just giving up. I didn't give up on the season, but I'm like, I'll see us up, wait and see. We've had Nick Foles before. He lost his job to Michael Vick at one point in his career, which I was a big fan even then. But then it was like, okay. Then he looked terrible against Dallas. They didn't need the game, but he looked terrible against Dallas the last game. Goes to the playoffs. They get the bye. They play Atlanta, and it's
that's
like
3-point home underdogs. The first time the number one seed has ever been a home underdog to start the playoffs.
And it did not look good. In the first half, I think they were. I don't know. They were down. They were down in that. I think 13-3.
I think weren't they down like 13, wasn't it like 10-3 or something?
10-3. So it was a very sloppy game.
The Falcons didn't score another point again.
Right. Like so Nick Foles gets on a roll. That's where the run hits. Like I said, he was good for that run. He looked good in the second half. And then the Minnesota game, he played lights out. They dominated them 38-7. They go to Super Bowl, and he's going against Tom Brady. And it's
the best game of football he's ever played.
Back and forth. I mean, the Eagles were up. It was 19-9 at one point. And they looked really good. The defensively they didn't, but he was going back and forth with Tom Brady. I'm like, yes, okay. Nick Foles had the best of his career. 2.5 games. He just got hot and got on a run, and the rest was history. So that was one of, like I said, one of the best moments I've got to, and then just to be in the city and witness it and celebrating was like, that was the best sports memory I've ever enjoyed and encountered.
And I mean, I think people say, Eagles being the Patriots or Eagles Super Bowl win. I think we get the Philly special image. Like,
yes,
you can tie it to even almost one specific play that people can kind of like always go back to. It, like true underdog of Nick Foles.
Yes, so, the Philly special. They tried to trademark it, but they couldn't. I think they trademarked Philly, but they couldn't trademark the Philly special. That was that play. I like I told you, I bought so much memorabilia. I got newspaper clippings, I got magazines, I got the DVD, and I go back sometimes and just kind of watch. I watch on YouTube now, but just watch the Philly special play. That was a really good. I mean, drawn up play just to see Doug Peterson just look at Nick Foles when he said, "You want to run Philly special, Philly," and he kind of looks at him for a few seconds and said, "Sure, why not? 4th and goal, why not?" And then that's so much faith he had, and I mean, he had that faith in Carson Wentz too. I mean, I think Carson Wentz is just as much of the that's his Super Bowl too, just as much as it was Nick Foles. I mean, he played 3/4 of the season.
Like you're saying, 11 wins. You said
11-2. 11-2. Yeah,
that definitely contributed to them being a number one seed and get everything they did. So but I think just to the Nick Foles credit, you could be not so great your whole career, and if you get the chance in the playoffs, that's where like championships are made with just performing in those weeks, and
Yeah.
so like Nick Foles might be the most exemplary of it in all sports.
Oh yeah, he's definitely exemplary in Philadelphia because he's got a statue at at the link. So and I think that's where Carson Wentz, his career kind of just went, because he's always was chasing. He was chasing that 2017 year. He's still trying to chase that, and there are other things with Carson Wentz, the lack of leadership and not taking accountability, those type of things has done his career in. And I think to me, this is his last chance with the Washington football, or with the Guardians now.
Commanders.
Commanders, yes, sorry, yeah, Commanders. Sorry, Washington fans. I don't mean to. Yes, I'm used to now saying the Washington football team, but the Commanders. Yeah, I think this is Wentz's last chance to be a starter in the league. If not, I think he's going to be a backup if he doesn't at least win some games and maybe try to lead Washington. I don't see it, but get it to the playoffs.
I guess we'll have to find out as the season goes on. And I know we'll definitely be with you here at Going for Two. Courtney will be, as always, with The Real Deal. So definitely check that on Saturdays. And Courtney, if you want to plug anything else and let people know where they can find and follow you, feel free.
Absolutely. I appreciate this. I enjoyed it. I mean, you had me thinking. I had to go, like I said, to go back into history and into the thinking tank, just to remember a lot of these things. But I really enjoyed it. You can catch the Real Deal on all podcast platforms. We're everywhere. Spotify, Google, Apple. I always say Google The Real Deal with Courtney Harden to get all the episodes there. We're also on Roku, BS3TVNetwork.com, Spreaker. And you can follow at Get The Real Deal on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can just get all the content. Like I said, wherever you get podcasts.
Awesome. And same thing with the entire Going for Two Live network on YouTube, again, at Going for Two Live, on Twitter at Going for Two Live. I'm also on Twitter at Senra Says for all of my personal content. But of course, if you're on YouTube and you're watching this not live, but in repeat, we appreciate if you comment below the video, you hit the like button if you are watching live, or if you are watching afterwards. And of course, subscribe. Really appreciate that support. And of course, the Going for Two Live network. I know Jeff last week tweeted out the season schedule content for once the NFL season starts, and there literally shows every day of the week. So Going for Two Live will have you covered Sunday to Sunday. Every day there's going to be shows. In the off season, we're still not quite there, but I know tomorrow night Speak On It will be on, and I believe the fantasy cheat sheet will be it'll be them as well. So you get a double dose this Tuesday, tomorrow night, on the Going for Two Live network. So stay connected to that. I know next week Gladys will be back on for the 2-point conversion, but then 2 weeks afterwards, I'll be back for the season finale of press coverage when Dr. James Ferretti of the Going for Two Live Monday crew with me will join me for a one-on-one show. So I'm really looking forward to that. I was really excited to kind of end the season with Courtney and then Doc in back-to-back episodes. I think that'll be a great way to kind of end this off season as we get into this NFL season. Yeah,
definitely. I've had the Doc on the show last year, and he sent me his book, so definitely check that out as well. He's plugged into the injuries, and that helped. Yes, that's he understands all the injuries and everything too. So I'll be looking forward to listening to that. Listen to the show next week.
We'll give it the plug. Yeah. So injuries suck, but your fantasy team doesn't have to. This book definitely doesn't suck. This is an amazing resource. So it
was amazing.
It's not that long either. I mean, this is like literally 100 pages, and it's filled with great content. So
very good content.
And I know right now Doc is doing a special. I believe, I think like a quarter of the proceeds he raises this month from the book are going to the Alzheimer's Association. So now would be the best time to get it, because you're not only getting this great resource, but you're also help giving back. So
it's all about giving back. I get totally on board with that.
And if you want to find it, you can follow the Doc on Twitter at TFS Doc. And I think on his Twitter bio, there's a link there or in a pinned tweet. So, or again, just look up on Amazon, Injury Suck, but your fantasy team doesn't have to.
Love the title.
Yeah, right on the nose, right?
I
love the title of your show, right? The Real Deal. And it seems like that's what you do. You're authentic. You give the real deal, a real true sports fan, fantasy manager. And I really appreciated having you on here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you again. Like I said, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And just like I said, just talking sports and our favorite teams, our favorite players, and memories and things like that. I definitely enjoyed this.
Awesome. Hope the listeners, viewers enjoyed it as well. Like I said, we'll be back in 2 weeks for the season finale of Press Coverage. Bye for now.